Hey Sagittarius, welcome to October 2020. I started doing your reading and I kind of got a little distracted, I guess you could say. So I'm going to start over. So I already pulled your cards. But I'm just pulling from my Mystic Mondays deck. I'm not doing archetypes this month just because I felt like the archetypes, while super fun, are huge energies that really kind of like dominated the readings, and I just kind of wanted to check in with the tarot and get kind of like let what wants to come in terms of a message. So let's start with the Fool in reverse, the Four of Swords, and the Five of Pentacles. Look, you, Sagittarius, are a mutable fire sign. I don't think you're any stranger to chaos. I think you, in fact, maybe enjoy chaos to some degree. You're a maverick. You're a revolutionary. You're not afraid of change, I think, compared to some of the other signs. So, in a way, if anything, maybe this whole period has been kind of like, I kind of want to say it's like been crushing your spirit a little bit. Only in that I think you are feeling disconnected from your purpose. And I get that with the Fool in reverse, the Four of Swords, and the Five of Pentacles. The Five of Pentacles is kind of a card of like feeling alienated, feeling isolated, feeling a lack of support, a constriction of support, of feeling like belonging. In the traditional Rider-Waite, it's someone outside of a church waiting in the cold and feeling like they have nowhere to go, feeling kind of banished in a sense from the village, like that they not only don't have what they need, but they don't have the ability to get the help that they need. And then the Four of Swords, to me, is a card of recovery, of meditation, of going inward, of processing, of recovering, of taking it all in. It's the card that follows the Three of Swords, which is heartbreak. So it's kind of like, after all of that, like, disruption, Four of Swords is like, I'm trying to rebuild my foundation. Like, it got blown up, so now I am trying to like let the dust settle and trying to like kind of catch my breath. So with these two cards showing up, plus with the Fool in reverse, I kind of felt like, for you, Sagittarius, there's this feeling at the top of the month that's a little bit heavy, that's kind of like, I'm feeling isolated, to say the least. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling adrift at sea. I'm feeling lost in space. I'm feeling kind of like unmoored from like what even new beginnings are there for me, because it just feels kind of like I've not only reached the end of my rope, it's just there's no rope left, right? Like, that's sort of the vibe, is just this like deep uncertainty and kind of existential kind of angst to me about, do my friends even like me? I mean, maybe you, Sagittarius, have been like going out in the world and living large, and if so, that's your choice, and like, if this isn't resonating with you, it's not your message, and then you're not listening, right? But if this is resonating with you, if this feels like I'm tapping into something, then that's why I do these readings. It's just to affirm and provide guidance for people who the messages are meant for. So you do have to use your discernment when you're listening to tarot. They're not all for everyone. Okay? Great. Okay, so anyway, I think with this energy, you're feeling kind of like, fuck. Do my friends even like me anymore? Do I even have friends? When will this end too, is kind of a question. Like, just feeling kind of like, okay, it's like, I mean, this whole period is kind of like death and rebirth. So it's kind of like with the butterfly metaphor, it's like you've become the goo in the cocoon, and you're like, well, now I'm just goo. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you can feel or sense, again, a new beginning or like a new path for yourself. So I think there's just a sense of like, kind of a sense of grieving a little bit, but the grieving ultimately feels positive to me. It just feels a little bit heavy. So, because we got the Nine of Swords in reverse, we got the Devil in reverse, and we got the Wheel of Fortune in reverse, as well as this, right? Two of Swords in reverse. So with these, what I want to say is like, Two of Swords is indecision or being blocked, but it's in reverse. So what does that mean for us? I think it's kind of like you're it's like you're not blocked from anything, but I again feel this sense of like drifting or like listlessness or just sort of like lack of conviction or purpose in what you're doing anymore, just because there's this overall ennui of like, what's the point? Especially again, being a mutable fire sign, you were probably a little more extroverted than most people. And I think if you're not getting your fire, like kind of having these outlets to use your energy, and if it's like kind of like all feeling like the walls are caving in on you, and honestly, I'll speak for myself, right? Like, I am not a Sagittarius, but I have some Sagittarius placements, like my Saturn, and I think my, maybe my Neptune, or no, it's Capricorn. I don't know. Uranus. I have some Sagittarius in me. And I guess one thing I learned about myself is that I'm a fairly adventurous person. Like, I never really thought of myself as being adventurous, but having that adventure, that sense of adventure taken away from me during this period of time, I'm realizing how much I used travel and like getting out and like kind of stepping into the unknown or taking a couple risks or kind of like, you know, I just used travel as an outlet for my spirit to feel kind of like whole. And that's not available to us right now. And it can be a little bit hard to just have to sit in this one place and to feel like your wings have been clipped, you know? And that's what I'm feeling for you, Sagittarius. So when I'm feeling, it's like, I think with this Two of Swords in reverse, it's like there's this sense of like surrender, but not in a like, oh, I surrender, like, God, do what you will. Like, it's not like a giving it up to God. It's just kind of like, to me, like, a resigned, like, I guess I'm never, it's just sort of a disappointment. I feel like you're not, like, you're accepting maybe this Four of Swords energy with the Two of Swords in reverse. Like, you're accepting that there is more of this cocoon, rest, recovery period at play, but I don't think you're, like, super stoked about it. Because with this Wheel of Fortune in reverse, I think you really do desperately want things to change. So it's kind of like, I think you're kind of in that rock and the hard place of like, okay, I'm unmoored, I'm adrift at sea, I'm lost in space, I feel lonely, I don't, like, even if like I can talk to my friends on Zoom, it's just not the same, and we're all changing too, so like, who are we even going to be? Are we even going to be able to reconnect? And I miss my life, I miss going out on those adventures, I'd miss kind of like rolling the dice of life and kind of like letting the wind take me where it will, and I miss the movement and the change and the dynamism of life, because it's not really, like, even though there is plenty of chaos in the world, it's not the same as what you had access to before, right? So what I mean by that is, like, there's chaos with everyone being crazy, but chaos with everyone just being insane is different than having the open road at your disposal, or being able to kind of like go on an adventure or go meet people safely without there being kind of, it's like in a way almost like all the chaos in the world is the very reason why you're being kind of contained in this space. And so it's like, I think with this change, it's like you want things to change. You also, with this Two of Swords in reverse, accept that things aren't probably going to be changing anytime soon, but there's this sort of disappointment and like, I think, I don't want to say it's impatience, but it's sort of like, a longing for something that feels like home to you, even if what home is to you is like having that freedom. I just feel like there's like a constriction and a lack of freedom right now that is especially hard for your spirit, Sagittarius. And I think that you are accepting it and like understanding of it, and there is like a little bit of a surrender, but it feels kind of like it's almost like you've been beaten down into submission a little bit. And it's like, as part of you giving up your spirit of freedom, or a part of you accepting the situation, it's like you're also kind of like, your soul's crushed a little bit. And again, I'm not saying this to like predict doom and gloom for you, or to say this is going to be the way it is forever. This too shall pass. But I'm just trying to like affirm and, you know, say, if this is how you are feeling, there's a reason for it. There's energies at play. There's a story happening. And this is kind of part of the story. Is just, you Sagittarius are kind of having a death and rebirth in and of yourself, right? Like, and death is not fun. Death is like definitely a decaying, and death is definitely like a gradual letting go of things. And there is rebirth on the other side. But let's talk about like why things are decaying and why things are at this standstill for a moment. So we got the Devil in reverse and the Nine of Swords in reverse. And ultimately, this is very good energy in this context. So I think I mentioned the butterfly. You turn to goo and you're like, why am I goo? There's nothing I can do as goo. And I miss my old life. I miss being a caterpillar, being able to like go and climb on leaves and eat them and like explore things. Like, there's just sort of this like, ugh. But the next step is the butterfly. And I am going to get to the Three of Wands. So why are you here? It's like, what is all this misery? What is all this loneliness for? What is all this like being stuck and trapped? And I also got the Empress in reverse and the King of Cups in reverse. So maybe okay, I pulled another card for those. I'll get to them. So anyway, we're talking about the Devil in reverse and the Nine of Swords. These are very compatible. It's like, I think what we're talking about is healing, right? So that is what this period is about, is healing. This is to bring it back to the idea of travel. Look, in the past, maybe when you traveled, though the spirit of adventure was in you and you liked kind of exploring the world and like learning new things about yourself through kind of the experiences and adventure and the openness that you had, the kind of like letting the wind take you where you will, there might have also been a part of you that was trying to run away from something. And these are addictions, these are wounds, these are disappointments. And so really, I feel like what you're being asked to do is confront all the stuff maybe you've avoided in your life, right? So the sense of alienation and isolation, it's like you're kind of being asked to like face the fears. And where had you in your life previously, like, you're leveling up, right? And the whole aspect of decay and letting go, it's like what you're letting go of is what no longer serves you. You're letting go of kind of that anxiety, maybe, that kind of like followed you wherever you went. Or you're letting go of and also I think like upgrading. Okay, I'm just trying to take it in. But like, there's a reason and a purpose for this. It's not like you're out in space or adrift at sea just for the hell of it. It's not like you haven't been forsaken. It's like you're on this journey to discover something. If you were out in space, you're probably trying to discover new planets or something, right? Or if you're out at sea, you're probably traveling somewhere. Like, you really, even though it feels like the standstill, it's like emotionally, spiritually, you are traveling, you are moving forward, even now in this like constricted space. So I think what I'm trying to talk about is the paradox of like, in your previous life, you could go get in the car and you could go drive up the coast and you could like go on an adventure, a little mini adventure, and find a piece of your soul. But part of that was like a running away, right? Part of it was the adventure was not just the adventure. The adventure was trying to like find some kind of like getting away from the devil, getting away from the anxiety. Like you were kind of always maybe on this, especially being a spiritual seeker type of sign, you were probably always like looking for some kind of answer in your quests. And now you're on the ultimate quest of going inward with that Four of Swords, right? You're on this ultimate quest of going inward. And so while there is a sadness and a longing and a loss for the old life, it's like really what you're doing is you're finding you're like getting really deeply in touch with your higher self, right? So you're letting go of the anxiety, you're letting go of the ways like the devil, addictions, or anxiety, or false beliefs, or self-limiting beliefs, or self-sabotaging patterns. You're releasing all of that because your patterns have been disrupted by this, right? And so even though you're longing for the change and feeling just like everything is so stuck, it's like actually there is a lot of change happening already, and the change is serving you, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if it feels like you're lost in space, you are on track, and you're out in space to discover something that you can bring back to people too, right? Like this is part of like the larger purpose of you being a Sagittarius, you being a maverick, you being there to serve the collective. So even though on the surface level of things, it just feels like I'm stuck in the house and I'm miserable and I want this to end and it'll never end, really there is this deep transformation happening. And it's you no longer running away from yourself, you no longer running away from your problems. It's really like doing that deep inner work of going inward and confronting the fears within that have held you back and that had you kind of on a loop. So pre 2020 Sagittarius adventures were fun and great, and you learned a little bit about yourself from them, but they were also kind of a symptom maybe of a pattern of you trying to run away from shit. And now you no longer have that at your disposal, so you're really having to kind of find it within you. That is something I will say, I guess, over here. So the Empress in reverse is like, I'm not receiving anything, right? Like, I'm sitting here waiting for some kind of divine inspiration and nothing's happening. Like, it just is this, like, very stuck, like, very frustrating energy of, like, nothing is happening. And the King of Cups in reverse is just, I think, an echo to me of that Five of Pentacles, of just, like, feeling emotionally adrift, right? Feeling, like, emotionally unsupported. Feeling emotionally also at the end of your rope. Like, just you've been strong for so long, maybe there's a need to grieve and like a need to like kind of just, especially this lack of control and like the whole being stuck and the whole like accepting it, but kind of like accepting it in a way that is like resigned. That's sort of what I get here. But High Priestess, right? That's like what I clarified it with. So this to me feels like that's overall the message for you, Sagittarius, is like, why is all this shit happening? Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay. Why is all this shit happening? Why are you so stuck? Why are you so alienated? Why are you so isolated? Why are you so like, kind of, why is it so dark right now? It's so that you can become the light. It's so that you can get really deeply in touch with your intuition. It's so that you can, again, in the future, there will be a future. And in the future, when you go to travel and you go on your adventures, it won't be out of a place of running away from shit or trying to avoid something. It'll be in like a really purposeful place of like, I am going to, you know, and like not necessarily that you know what you're getting out of each adventure, but there's just like a sense of purpose and a sense of conviction and a sense of like serving also the collective and like kind of like maybe stepping out of some selfishness. There's just like a greater, more divine purpose in your future that's not you bogged down by anxiety. It's you having confronted the fears that you were running away from, that you've now had this opportunity to really, being in this darkness, being in this isolated, alienated place that you're feeling in, is this work. It is this work of like being like, I'm so lost in the darkness that like I'm having to figure out how to be my own light, how to be my own guide, how to stoke my own fire, right? Especially as a fire sign, so that I can kind of have my own sense of like, no matter what is happening or how contained I am, I can still find the adventures within my own psyche. I hope I'm making sense, but it's like basically like literally about like this whole month feels like about confronting deep fears for a lot of the signs, but for you, I think it's like, who am I on the deeper level? Not who is like the fun surface level Sagittarius who goes on whirlwind trips, or like who is an extrovert. Who is like the deep Sagittarius who is the answer they've been looking for, right? Things are changing even if they don't feel like it. Even if it feels like this is like totally stagnant, there is a purpose for all of this. It's the goo. So you are going to transform into the butterfly. That is what this is all about. Enough said about that. There's a resigned feeling about all this, but that's okay. You are confronting a little bit of sense of loneliness and not knowing what's next, but that's quite all right. This is really about you accepting that you don't have control over everything, and that there are fallow periods of life where things don't come, right? And making it through them, having the strength and fortitude to make it through them, and realizing that maybe emotional support does have to start coming from within on some level, right? Like, that it doesn't always come from out there, but sometimes you have to be your own rock. You have to get yourself through that darkness. You have to be your own light. That's really what the message is to me. It's like you, Sagittarius, have to learn what it is to cultivate your own sense of hope and your own sense of light and your own sense of like, there will be a new dawn. And then we got the Three of Wands. So I do think things are going to open up again, and I think you're going to have your life back. But when you do, you're going to have really majorly upgraded. Again, that was kind of what this whole period was about, is like that when things do change, when things do move forward, you're no longer running away from shit. You don't feel the need to like kind of flit from thing to thing, kind of avoiding those darker fears because they've been faced. And so now, in the future, when you're traveling, whether literally, metaphorically, or just in your life, you're doing it kind of with direction. Or at least with, like, a good compass. That's what I want to say. It's not about the direction or knowing where you're going, but I think this High Priestess is you really fine-tuning your inner compass so that when you have your life back, and the Three of Wands is, like, kind of, like, picking the new adventure, you're doing so with, like, a deep sense of conviction and purpose, and, like, of using that compass to, like, really direct the flow of your life in a way that feels very meaningful. So I feel like also in kind of being in this darker period, you're gaining a deeper appreciation for yourself, like relying on yourself, right? Accepting the ebbs and flows of life, kind of getting in touch with that. Accepting that right now is not the time for new beginnings, and dealing with your loneliness, dealing with this kind of sense of isolation, but really allowing yourself this opportunity to change, even if it doesn't feel like things are changing on the surface level. Inwardly, you're changing on a major level because you're facing fears and letting go of stuff that had actually been kind of like keeping you running in circles, right? So even though you were like feeling like you were moving, you were really just kind of like running in a circle. And so in the future, when you move forward, you are no longer going to be running in circles. You're going to be moving to places that are really exciting, and maybe the kinds of places you always dreamed and hoped you would find on whatever spiritual, emotional, psychological level that may be. So that is my reading for you. I love you, and I will see you again in November. Okay. Bye.